Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork again. Shout out to Pod Match for reviving the guests, bringing the guests back on the Move Swiftly podcast. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate the platform very much. To my regular listeners, I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but I got to tell you, we are here again with another gem, another incredible story, another person that is not afraid to be vulnerable, not afraid to put it all out there, just has it absolutely nailed the whole podcast thing, limiting beliefs, all this bullshit that you tell yourself that you can't do. I guarantee you it'll be over by the end of this episode. So with all that, Justin Schenck, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Aswan, man, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to hopefully saying one or two things that make sense to your audience, but either way, we're gonna have a good time.
Yes, and the thing is, and I meant what I said when I started this episode, because one can look up your name and they could hear, hey, you got one of the podcasts that's been mentioned in Ink. You have a great live event. You've had folks like Ed Milet, Andy Facil, which, by the way, I'm kind of in the process of doing that 75 hard challenge. You've had some real hitters on your show, but you have a story, a background story with your parents, with your mother, dealing with certain situations that isn't all together. It isn't all success. It isn't all everything was good. So I'd love for you to kind of just go deep and talk a little bit about your background growing up, what you had to see, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, man. So I always jokingly say that if there was a senior superlative in high school for least likely to succeed, it would have been me. Like I had a 1.7 GPA in high school. My mom was in the middle of a 20-year battle with opioids, and my dad was in jail. And so when you look at those things, right, like it's like you've got no shot, kid. As a matter of fact, they say if your parent's an addict, you have a 50% chance of being an addict. And if your parent's in jail, you have a 50% chance of ending up in jail. Like do the math, I'm 100% screwed. Right. And so that's kind of really the starting point of everything. I didn't really know what I was going to do out of college or out of high school. I did a couple semesters of community college. I used to not say that. I used to say I didn't go to college because I barely showed up to class. And then somebody saw on my LinkedIn that I went to college, and like it literally just blew me up and tore me apart. People are really funny on the internet. So did a couple semesters of community college.
That feeling, right?
Yeah. And then when I was 19, I got a job in direct sales and ended up doing really, really well as first a rep and then a manager and running my own office and doing all these things with the organization. But the important part to that piece is I had a mentor within that organization who handed me a book, and that book is Who Moved My Cheese. If you haven't read it, it's a really easy read, but the idea behind the book is like change is going to happen around you. That doesn't matter. What matters is how you react to the change. So it really spoke to my core at that time at 19 years old, where I felt lost, where I didn't know where I was going, where, society was telling me I was going to be a failure because of how I was raised, all of these things. And so it gave me this perspective of, oh, wait, I have control over this, right? And thus began my journey into self-development, the idea of building my own business and being an entrepreneur and trying for a long time. And then I like to say 19 to 30 for me, 19 years old to 30 was the learning years, right? Like trying to figure out how to build a business, doing actually well in the corporate world, but not feeling fulfilled, and ended up going through 3 failed businesses. That led me to about 30. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. And to kind of put that in perspective, I launched the podcast 8.5 years ago. And 8.5 years ago, I would tell people I had a podcast and then we go, what's a podcast? Exactly. Now they roll their eyes and they go, oh, everybody has one. Right. But the original idea behind the show was I wanted to interview entrepreneurs, pick the brain, figure out how to be a better entrepreneur. So then I can actually launch a business that was successful. And what ended up happening was 6 months before I launched the show, my mom lost her 20-year bout of opioids. And in that moment, it completely changed my thought process about life. It completely changed what I was focused on. And I ended up going into a 3-month bender where I was blackout drunk 6 nights a week, and really kind of finding that rock bottom moment. On the other end, to shorten this long story, on the other end, after finally sitting in my feelings and feeling the pain and, kind of coming out of this bender moment of my life, I woke up and I said, I had 2 realizations. One was my mom didn't die because she was an addict. My mom died because she didn't love herself. And the second piece was I also didn't love myself. And that's where my journey truly began, of really trying to discover, like, what is life really for? How do we dive into our purpose? How do we find happiness, even if things aren't going the way we want? And then that's really kind of what made that put life into my podcast. And that's been able to create businesses and opportunities and speaking opportunities, and just feel really blessed to live the life I live now.
Well, firstly, condolences. I'm sure you've heard it, but I heard you previously talk about the homegoing of your mother, and you spoke about how you felt kind of free for her. You know, it was a situation where you learned something, but you also took and said, I'm not going to let her death go in vain. So I'm sure she's looking at you now, proud as can be, smiling, because it's so easy. And this is one of the things I wanted to ask you about. How did you lift from that resentment? Because I could see young men who are the victim. I mean, there's a ton of people out there who have a worse situation, who don't even have it, and they're always the victim, don't even have it as bad. But you were able to not say, hey, mom, you were on these opioids, you didn't love me. You actually went back and you took care of her. You did everything you could, and you don't walk around with that resentment. So what about that? What about, how did you, again, move from being resentful to now being someone that's not going to let that bullshit, never going to let someone live in that pain and that resentment? So
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? Addiction's a funny thing, right? I found out about my mom's addiction at the age of 12, and she passed away when I was just shy of 32. And so therefore it was probably longer than 20 years, but not to our knowledge. So I always put an asterisk to any story whenever I talk about my mom. She was an incredible mother. I could have not have asked for a better support system, a more loving mom, all of these things, right? But obviously she had this addiction that she couldn't escape. Which led to some odd moments in my life, right? It led to seeing my mom. I like the girl hiding her face in the back.
That's Miss Courtney, by the way. You can say hi. It's okay. Courtney, and she, man, yes, an ELC
Spe-
coordinator. She is
special guest,
somebody
Miss
you got to meet
Courtney.
after the recording, by the way. She does so. She is awesome. I teach, so she's one of my colleagues. I've been talking to her about you this morning, so you already
I
got an
love it.
audience member for sure.
I love it. So, sorry, this is, by the way, this is my ADD brain. Like, we're just gonna go off on tangents sometimes.
You
But
heard that, right?
yeah. So, with that being said, I would wake up some mornings and not know what mom I would have to deal with that day. Was it my loving mom who supported me and made me feel like a superhero and said, you can do whatever you want? Because as a matter of fact, me doing the crazy stuff now, launching a podcast when people didn't know what podcasts were, doing live events, launching multiple businesses, doing all that stuff. I really feel the reason I can do that is because my mom truly believed that any crazy idea that I had that I could go do, right? So I owe a lot of my success to her. I also owe a lot of my life lessons to her. Now, this is a perspective shift, right? Like when you're younger, you have two options. You can watch your parents, and if you don't like what they're doing, you go, well, I guess that's just life. Or you can watch your parents and go, well, I don't want that. And so my discovery started with, I don't want my life to be like that. I don't want to have to struggle. I don't want my car to get repossessed. I don't want to have to worry about paying my rent. I don't want to do any of those things in my life that my parents dealt with.
Right.
No, on the flip side, I didn't really know what I wanted, right? That's really where curiosity and self-awareness came into play, right? Asking questions, trying new things, finding mentors, being aware of my strengths and my weaknesses. I had a conversation with Ed Milet on the podcast who you mentioned was on, and him and I spoke where, his dad was a major alcoholic growing up. And we really feel like we learned self-awareness growing up in those situations. But again, that's perspective. How
Yeah.
can you look back and go, okay, what lessons were learned from these hardships versus like going, oh, woe is me. Why me? Right. And I'm not here to say I'm perfect. I've had those moments in my life where, I wish that things were easier. I wish that, we didn't have to worry about those things when I was a kid and trying to figure it out. But also when I look back now, it's gratitude, right? It's the lessons that I've learned. I don't know where I would be without those things. So you have to really, in those moments, speaking to those people who maybe in the victim mindset,
Right.
you have to look back and go, okay, well, what can I control? There's a great quote that has been my favorite quote for a very long time, which is life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to what happens to you.
Right.
I think that having that quote in my head every time something bad would happen changed my perspective as I approached any hardship, right? Hardships are a necessary thing in life. It's going to happen to everybody, but how are you going to react to them?
Man, I'm honestly, I'm definitely getting goosebumps hearing you talk because again, I love my parents more than anything. They owe me, I owe them my life. But that does not necessarily mean I agree with every single thing they do. And when you get those feelings of like your superheroes, the people that you love, when you get those feelings of them not being perfect, you're right. There is an avenue, a clear lane towards resentment. But you just said it. There was books, there was mentors, there were people that say, don't go that route. It's a very, very ugly path to go because it leads to nothing but heartache and nothing but excuse making, and you don't get anywhere. It doesn't serve you. I don't care. Again, love your parents very much. It does not serve you if you're going to spend your time being upset with them. All right. And that leads me to my next question with you is like, again, like you, I finished with a 2.2 grade point average. However, I played football and that was, that was kind of like, hey, you made it. You end up playing college football and all that. But you're right. I tore my ACL my first year. And when it came time to get into the real world and, go out and sell and things like that, the confidence was like, oh shit, I wasn't accepted in high school. I really don't, that whole 3.4, go to some fancy school, that lifestyle wasn't for me. I got to sell something. Can you please speak to people a little bit about the sales process? Because again, there's always a negative connotation with selling, but had it not been for your ability to sell, a lot of the things that you've been able to do now wouldn't be possible. So when you make that first sale at community college, direct seller, kind of talk to us a little bit, kind of explain the sales process there.
Yeah. So real quick, I want to speak to something you said about resentment towards your
Yes,
parents. I talk a lot about, and I don't know if, we matched through Podmatch. I'm really good friends with Alex Sanfilippo, who started Podmatch. Just a
oh, no
great
kidding. Yeah.
platform.
Well, he always comments on my posts because I've been raving about him for the past, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks I've been on it. I've been raving about him. So he's always commenting on my posts. So,
Yeah, dude, he's truly a genuine human being, and it's rare in a lot of these spaces that people are like that, and he's truly genuine. But the resentment towards your parents. So I talk about the 5 people you need in your life, and we can talk about that a little bit later, right? It's the cheerleader, the bruiser, so on and so forth. I'm a bruiser. If I find an adult who still is pissed off and kicking rocks about their parents, instead of realizing that their parents were experiencing this life for the first time as well, and they made mistakes along the way, like just like you did. It may not be as bad, but you also have made mistakes. Like let's move on from that and get over ourselves and start to heal. Right. That's how you crush generational trauma and pain and all the things in between. Right. Like you have to get past the resentment. Right. Forgive them for you, not for them, and move forward. Just a little asterisk there.
Thank you.
Now I hate sales. I hate it. But with that being said, it's a necessity.
Wow.
So I look at sales a little bit differently, and I've been through all the sales trainings. I've been through Sandler sales training. I've done all the things from my corporate life. And so it's a necessity in life. But one thing I will say is that, like, even if you're not in quote sales, you are always selling something. You're selling yourself, you're selling your personality, you're selling your abilities, you're doing all of these things, right? Like even in the dating world, like you're on a first date, you're selling yourself as a partner to this person in some way, shape, or form. So the one superpower that I had in sales, and the reason I did really, really well, as a matter of fact, at one point I led the nation with this organization in a closing ratio, which was 93%. So I closed 93% of the sales that I went to, but it started with curiosity, right? I believe curiosity is a superpower, to truly be curious in the people that you're sitting across from, right? Like I believe my podcast does really well because I actually care about what my guest has been through and gone through.
Okay.
Just like I was a successful salesperson, because I was truly curious about how I can help them with whatever they needed help with. Right. Same thing now. I sell things now. I have a mastermind. I have a live event. I have a company called Podbrand. I have to sell people now, but it's more of like, how do I serve you? And so for sales for me is, hey, I have this thing. It might not be the right fit for you, and that's okay. But let's build a relationship and figure out how I can support you in whatever you're doing. Now, sometimes I'm the solution. Sometimes somebody else is the solution. But at the end of the day, sales is necessary, but it doesn't have to be as robotic as people make it seem. Objection cycles and this and that, agree, but tell the truth, close again. Like all these things that they teach through sales, it's a tool, but it's not a necessity. And I think people get caught up in like the grody-ness of what a car salesman is versus like, hey, I have a solution for you. Let me just be the connector when it comes to that. And so that's how I view sales now. But again, I've been through all of it, and it's so funny. I went through Sandler sales training, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. They're really big on like
I didn't go through it, but I heard of them.
Yeah, they're really big on finding the pain points, right? Like, find their pain points and then give them the solution. And so you like pick and prod and ask the right questions and do all these things. It was a fascinating process to go through. I definitely learned some skills going through it. And then years later, after I went through Sandler sales training, I was speaking at a podcasting event in San Diego. And I met this guy named Doug Sandler, who was actually the son of the guy who created Sandler Sales and the Sandler Sales Training. And I literally said to him, I sat down and I was like, hey, Doug, let's talk about your pain points. And he goes, don't give me that shit. Right. So this whole
Right.
this whole like big circle moment of like, I did used to think that the process of sales is something that I had to follow. But when I finally realized, and I met the son of the guy who created it, he's like, oh yeah, that's BS.
Yeah.
But with that being said, after that long story, sales is a necessity. And it's okay as long as you're curious about what that individual needs versus having to force them, right? Like a dirty car salesman.
Yeah, but I want to kind of break down the initial word you said and give us some context. That word curiosity, all right? Because curiosity, like you were talking about, you were coming from a place where you didn't know what you were going to do in life, but the curiosity, as you refer to it as your superpower, when we're talking curiosity, I want to make sure you listeners are clear when I say this. It has to be genuine. It has to be a genuine curiosity about how the person's doing. When I first got into this, I was a college scout and I just finished playing football. So I was genuinely curious on how these players were going to get to the process of getting to a college program. You have to be genuinely curious about what you're doing. So that kind of leads me to the next question is, when it came to the company you were working with, how were you able to transition to become an entrepreneur? Like, was it just building up the curiosity with the clients? How did you make it so, again, people react to you very genuine of a person to, again, I could leave this business and now I could run my own thing and create these brand deals, create these affiliate deals, because again, you're going to be selling, but that person who's paying for whatever it is you have, they have to know and like and trust factor.
Yeah. So a couple things like, right. So the transition into entrepreneurship took a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
I tried on the side to start a
Oh my
couple
God,
of
I gotta pause you.
businesses.
I gotta pause you. Listeners, he said it took a long time, so it's not gonna happen overnight. I know that's what Instagram tells you. I know it's easy to put something on your bio, lifestyle entrepreneur. I know what the likes look like, but he said it takes a long time. Just want to make sure we pause you there so you guys understand that. So go ahead, man.
Yeah, I mean, it took me probably trying for 11 to 12 years before I became a full-time entrepreneur. And like I said, had 3 failed businesses where I lost a lot of money and a lot of opportunity and all those things in between. Now, the transition happened, like I said, slowly because I stayed in the corporate world to support myself. I lived alone since I was 18 years old. So like there was no sense of like, oh, let me fully take the leap. I would have been homeless, right? So I had to keep the day job while building the daydream. And
Gotcha.
so the first thing the funny thing is I do events now, but the first event or the first company I ever tried to launch was an events company where we put together seminars and expos for entrepreneurs and business owners and so on and so forth, ranging everything from like, customer service to sales to whatever. Right. And so we were putting these things together and it was doing well. It was starting to build. And I was like, yeah, man, this is it. Like I was probably 24 years old and I was like, this is the thing that's going to make me a full-time entrepreneur. Like this is going to be really, really great. And we ended up doing decent. And then we decided to put every dime that we made into a business expo. We paid a guy named Bill Rancic a ton of money to come speak. If you don't know who he is, he actually won the first season of The Apprentice. So that ages me a bit. But like, he came in to speak at the event, or he was going to, and we ended up selling 3 tickets to the event. And so after pouring all of our money into it and making $0 from it, we shut down the business. And so that was like the first loss. And I'll say this. Afterwards, I remember calling my mom after I had a business partner. I remember calling my mom after me and my business partner decided to shut it down. And I said, hey mom, we're going to shut it down and I don't really know what I'm going to do. Like that was the thing that I was passionate about or what I thought I was passionate about. All these things. And I remember my mom saying specifically, and I said this in her eulogy, my mom said, keep your head up and keep moving forward because you're already going in the right direction.
Yes.
And I realized at that moment, I didn't realize at that moment, I later in retrospective realized that like that was the most powerful thing she could have said. Like
Right.
all that matters is if you're headed in the right direction, right? Like I say all the time now, there is no destination. Your destination in this life is death. Otherwise, you will continue to grow. You will continue to fail. You will continue to try new things. You will continue to, do all of these things. And it was a great retrospective for me to be like, wow, like she was just being a mom. but
Yeah.
such a powerful statement when you look back and realize how true it really is, right? You know, and then going forward, I ended up actually in medical sales and medical sales management and doing really well financially, but trying some other businesses. We tried to launch an app, which, by the way, it's easier now because they have all this AI stuff. But back in the day when you need to get a programmer, it's a very expensive, very difficult process. I don't recommend it back then. It's a little easier now. And then the third thing was actually the first business that ended up becoming successful, but it was a failure first.
Right.
And this is what I realized is, you know, I still own to this day a podcast production company. You won't find it anywhere on the internet. It's completely referral based. I work with high-end influencers, all these things, and my team kind of does all the work, and I help build out their brands and all their platforms. That was the first thing I tried, and it failed miserably. And I realized it's because I was chasing money. And this is the key to longevity in entrepreneurship. If you chase money, I promise you, you will fail. It will come across as desperation, not only to your potential clients, but it will come off as desperation to the universe. And I don't care what you believe, whether you believe in God, whether it's Allah, Mother Nature, or nothing. What you can believe in is that we are all energy, right? Like everything is energy in us, protons, neutrons, and electrons. Break it down to science. If you are chasing money, that vibration is dirty, and the universe will say, no, you will not have it. Now, when I switched my vibration and said, I want to help people build a brand in order to change the world, and this is how I'm going to do it in the vehicle, which I'm going to do it, it very quickly exploded, and I very quickly got in the avenue of working with some of the coolest people in the industry. And so if you want longevity in entrepreneurship, you're going to have to tie it to a purpose. What is your purpose in this world? And once you do that, it becomes easier to do the hard work that it takes to get you to build success. And so that's what I would say to people as far as like, okay, entrepreneurship and trying to figure out how do you marry the two. If you're speaking in a sales process or speaking in how do I get people to trust me? If it's your purpose, it will come across as authentic and honest and vulnerable. And then that's how people will then trust you very, very quickly, as long as you can condense it in a short conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's very powerful what you just said because, again, for example, my nephew is going to be 13 and my niece is 15, and it could be very confusing to them when it comes to success and money. It could be incredibly confusing to a young person, even an adult that's trying to leave their business or retire to their job, whatever it is. Success and money have a very two distinct, they're very two distinct things, all right? Everybody wants to get paid. Everybody needs money. Everybody got to pay bills. I've said it so many times on this show. You guys are probably tired of hearing me say it. Your purpose and what it is you specifically want to do, it's your job to figure out how you get to get paid doing that. But when you focus on doing that, the money really is going to be second nature because you're going to enjoy doing it so much. All right. And you're going to be doing it so long that you enjoy doing it so much that eventually people will start paying for you. And then the big thing is when you do it, you're fixing a problem. And that's when you deserve to be paid. So you know what problem you're fixing. And that leads me to the next thing I want to chat with you about is when you start seeing these success, you see it's the Ed Milet's on the show. And I believe there was Justin Kavanaugh too. I grew up in Maryland, so I knew
Coach Cav, dude, he's
Coach
one of my best friends.
yeah, Coach Cav and it was Alex Molden. I met up with him too. There's a lot of synergy. We could talk more about that once we start recording. But when you see all these successful people, right? What would you say is the common thread with all of them? All right. This is a very important thing because it doesn't happen overnight. When people see these videos, they see them, whether it's even the other just Gary V is another one, they start to think, okay, that's going to happen, but there's specific things that they do that make it so they're great every single day. So, the floor is yours. Please just chat a little bit.
You know, it's funny. You would think that I would step back and I would have thought about this as I was going through the process of doing all these interviews. I never thought about it. Like I never thought to myself, what's the common thread? And then I was asked that. I spoke at an event and one of the follow-up questions was like, what's the common thread? And I really had to like go back and go, oh my God, like you really think about all the different types of people I've had on the show, right? You mentioned some of them, but then you have comedians like Burt Kreischer and JP Sears. Yeah. You have, Pro Bowl running back Ricky Williams has been on the show. You've got a number of WWE guys, like all these things. They come from all walks of life. And so like, I'm like, how the hell do I tie a thread behind all of these things?
Mhm.
And I very quickly realized that there's a specific question that I ask every single person. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what's your definition of success? The
Mhm.
second part is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself? Right. The first piece is always different, right? Success is defined differently by everybody. I've had people on that still define money as success. I have
Mhm.
people that define freedom as success. I have, happy family as success, whatever it is.
Mhm.
They all have a different definition, but I realized there was a common thread behind the three things they did every single day.
Mhm.
And the common thread was, although the things were a little bit different, it was always to serve themselves first. And this is the powerful piece. Like, the realization in that moment when I thought about it is, I realized that being selfish is the most selfless thing you can do, because somebody can't pour from an empty cup, right? Like, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And so you have to make time every single day to make sure that you are healthy, that your mind is in the right place, that you are locked in order to serve at a higher level, whether that's your family, whether that's people listening to the podcast, whatever the case may be. And so I started to add non-negotiables every day to my list in order to fill my cup. And then here's the flip side. For years and years and years, I just tried to pour from an empty cup because I wanted to help so many people. I truly, genuinely wanted to help people, but you can't help people when your cup is empty. And so the big switch for me mentally was, what's in my cup is for me, and what overflows is for everybody else.
Yeah.
Now I want to overflow the shit out of my cup.
Yeah.
But with that being said, like, what's in my cup is for me. And so I need to take care of myself first. And that was the common thread behind all the conversations I've had.
I've actually heard Grant Cardone say this, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. He said, "Poor people are selfish." You know, when you talk to someone, they say, "I don't need to make a lot of money. I only need to make a certain amount." Well, what about your family? What about your church? What about your community? What about the people that depend on you to make a living? And that, I mean, Grant Cardone is Grant Cardone, but listen, you just took it to another level when you said being or being selfish is also the greatest form of being selfless. And I want to make sure we're clarifying that for the listeners. Selfish in it, that you got to really know what fills your cup. Like for me, run every single morning. I read and I write. I do the things that are making it so I'm able to come on and listen to or have a conversation with highly intelligent folks. So I know specifically what to ask them, what I want my audience to get out of every single guest. That's a selfless thing. It's not for As One. All right. As One has close to 1,000 episodes on the show. It's all about providing some insight for you to continue to grow every single day. And that leads me to the next point. Like, when your podcast is a success, you're doing all these things. How do you dictate, or how do you decipher what's going to be the next move for you? Because you get one thing, again, success. It's like, you got to do another thing, got to stay relevant, got to do this. Before, when you started, people didn't even know what podcasts were. Maybe the internet wasn't like that, or Instagram wasn't around. So how do you dictate on what your next move going to be?
Yeah, man. So I think the one thing, going back to being curious, like
Mhm.
asking the questions, being in the right rooms, being a part of masterminds, like seeing what's the next possible thing. But the other thing to this is, like, because of the success that I've had, opportunities come my way quite often.
Yes.
Um, so I have two things. I hate working a lot of hours, right? There's very few days that I work past 2 p.m. Like, I
Okay.
work to live. I don't live to work.
Yes.
So I'm the lazy entrepreneur. Like, how can I work the least amount of time and get the most amount of money for my time? And so I have a very easy two filter thing. The first thing is, how much time is it going to take me in order to dive into this next venture? And would it
Yeah.
be worth the amount of time? So sometimes it's more time than I want, but it might be worth it. The second thing is it going to be fun? And
Well,
if it's too many hours for the amount of what I get back, I don't do it. And if it's not fun, I don't do it. Right. And I usually ask the question, is it fun first? Because that's an easy yes, no answer. So that's the filter system for me now. Now,
mhm.
when I was younger and every move made sense, and I had to make the next move, I will say this: I probably wasn't smart enough to figure it out. Like, I was just going blindly, just trying to try new things regularly. Does this hit? Does this make sense? And then I would continuously do it until I realized, okay, this is not serving me, or this is serving me.
Right.
Now, I want to share a miss, which I think is more important for people to hear.
Right.
So I use video since day one. I've recorded using video since day one. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't do an interview if somebody wouldn't come on camera. And it's odd for you to think right now, as we have this conversation, like, why wouldn't somebody come on camera? Well, it was a weird thing back then to do video calls with anybody, right? I was using Skype with a third-party recorder. Like, it was
man.
like, you know, we're going
right back. Yeah.
yeah, we're going way back. That's where I started, right? Now, I said to myself, nobody would ever watch two people sitting side by side on a screen talking to each other. Nobody would ever do that. So I never posted the videos anywhere. As a matter of fact, most of them are gone. Like, it's hard for me to, because like external hard drive stopped working after a while. So always back up your backups is good advice.
Yes.
But like most of that video content does not exist anymore. Because I said that. Then guess what happened in 2020? COVID hit. And everybody was watching content of people sitting on screen side by side with that video. And I went, oh my God, I have 5 years of video content that I can't use, which I could have created so much content. Right. And so don't ever, and the lesson in this to me is, because I didn't know, nobody knew that was going to happen. Nobody realized how important video is. Like back then it was just Instagram, post a picture of your food, right? Like it was a completely different world when I started the podcast. But with that being said, don't ever underutilize your resources. Don't ever underutilize your resources. And I think that's the lesson that I learned there. And I go, great. Now I probably overutilize my resources, right? Like how much can I pour into every single thing that I'm doing? Because if you underutilize it, you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Right. It's better. It's better to overutilize than underutilize. You don't want to be that person that underutilizes. And quick. Well, the thing is, when you're talking about your hours, it made me think of, and I know you know him pretty well, but Andy Frisella, how he was talking about that 75 hard challenge. He was like, look, get it done and go fucking play Call of Duty for the rest of the day, you know? Just go do what it is you have to do. And that is very powerful as well, is get your work done early and then go do what it is you have to do for the rest of the day. So, you know, with all that, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you kind of talk about your live events, your business, what's next? You know, what can people, how can people get in touch with you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, man. So first of all, this is a great conversation. I could talk to you for another hour.
Yes.
But with that being said, you know, I always say this, like wherever they're listening to this podcast, search the Growth Now movement. And I'm on this journey along with them. So if they like what they hear, click subscribe and come on the journey with me. And let's grow together, right? That's number one. Number two, I do have a live event coming up called Growth Now Summit Live in September of this year in Westchester, Pennsylvania, which is, you know, an Uber rider, a train from Philadelphia. And it is packed with an incredible speaker lineup. It's my third big live event that I'm doing. So they can go to growthnowsummit.com and check out tickets there. As a matter of fact, if they're interested, they can use the code friendly24 and they'll get $100 off their ticket for your listeners there. So come hang out with me there. Other than that, man, hey, look, follow me on Instagram. Send me a message. Would love to hear what you're up to and see how I can support you. And I genuinely mean that. So reach out and let me know. And I hope to connect soon. But dude, this was a great conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. So I will, and also, by the way, I'll make sure I include all that in the show notes as well. And Justin, the way I close out all the shows, here's what we do. I want you to use your imagination a little bit. I want you to pretend you're back to, I believe you said, maybe we'll say 15 years old, you're 1.7 GPA. I want you to pretend that high school kid has clicked into the Zoom room. He's 1.7. His dad is doing this. His mom is addicted to it. Like, he's going through it and probably looks at it as like, I have no chance. I want you to pretend that he's in the Zoom room now. Give him some words of encouragement and we'll officially close.
It's probably not the most hyped up answer, but it's the true answer. And I would say to my 15-year-old self, don't worry, you're exactly where you need to be and exactly where you're supposed to be for your greater purpose in this world.
Thank you. Because again, you're not just talking to Justin, you're talking to thousands and thousands of kids who go through the system. It may not be ideal for them. They get looked at as if they're failures, but there is a way, there is an avenue. And I mean that from the heart. That was very heartfelt for me as well, because I'm thinking back to when I was getting my report card and my dad's up 2.2 and all that. So appreciate you from the heart. You know, I'm sure you've helped a lot of people as well through your transparency and your vulnerability as well. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.